Last week, I took the L, but tonight we bounce back. I was very sick, but now I'm feeling much better, and we are back with episode 23. We're going to be talking about some data of the first year of the What's Cooking podcast. Then we're going to get into ranking the months of the year. Here we go. What's cooking, guys? I got to add in a little bit of an update here. This is Brandon in 2023. This is future Brandon from when you're listening to this episode. Let me just say, life comes at you pretty fast. 1 minute you're riding high, you're living life, you're living large. Everything seems to be good. You're on a crazy streak of consistency, and life is just a dream, you know? And then the next week, you come around and you find out that you test positive for influenza A, and you go through about a box full of tissues in the matter of 48 hours, and you don't feel like doing anything, you don't feel like eating, and you're stuck on the couch for a couple days. And that's the kind of whirlwind that I've had recently. It ended up costing me my streak of consecutive What's Cooking episodes being released. You're about to hear me brag about how I was being so consistent and so committed to this podcast for 22 weeks in a row. This will be the 23rd in a row. Unfortunately, we did end up having to postpone this episode due to my influenza episode. But we are back. We are back this week in 2023, and I'm going to be hopefully trying to start up another streak, stay as consistent as I can. But just keep that in mind when you listen to this next part, because I was speaking as if that streak was going to continue, and I had stayed with the 23rd episode in a row, but unfortunately, last week was tough on the immune system, and we had a tough go of it, but I'm happy to announce that I'm feeling much better. We are in good spirits, we are in good health, and the show will continue on. Although delayed, it will continue on. Happy to have you guys back for episode 23. Let's go ahead and listen to the previous Brandon of 2022 talk about some of the year-end achievements, some of the year-end data and metrics as we look back at the first year of the What's Cooking podcast. What's Cooking, episode 23. Shout out Michael Jordan, or if you're more of a LeBron person, I suppose LeBron has worn 23 at times. But we are back on a Wednesday for our final episode of 2022. I decided to start the What's Cooking podcast back in July of this year, and I ended up sticking with the plan. I ended up staying consistent with my original idea, and I was able to post an episode of this podcast one time a week for every week since July. That's 23 Wednesdays in a row. You guys have had an opportunity to join me for another What's Cooking episode. So I'm very glad that I've been able to stay committed and think of new ideas, think of new guests, think of new content for you guys to listen to. I'm really glad with how things turned out now that I'm looking back on my first year with the podcast. If you guys remember back to some of my first episodes, I was trying to describe the reasons for me starting this podcast. Some of the main ones were I want to get better at having conversations with people. I want to become a more confident speaker. But I think the podcast has really evolved beyond my original vision. It's become a way for me to reconnect with some old friends and stay connected with some more recent friends. And what really surprised me is the amount of people that mention to me indirectly or directly that they listen to the podcast. I have some friends that I never really would have considered that they might give it a chance to listen, tell me that they listened and liked it. I have some friends of my parents that I never would have dreamed that they'd be interested, give it a listen and let me know what they think. Some relatives and some distant mutual friends. So it's really crazy the reach that I've had with this podcast, and it really is cool to watch and cool to observe the impact that I'm having. Just speaking my mind, speaking my interests, and sharing some knowledge with you guys. So I think that's super cool. I think that motivates me to keep going. And I'm really glad with my first year, 2022, What's Cooking podcast. We're going to keep this thing rolling as long as we can, as long as I see a future with this podcast, as long as I have more things to talk about. I think that's going to continue for this foreseeable future. Obviously, there's no way to tell when I might decide to hang it up for the last time. As my dermatologist once said, my crystal ball is in the shop. AKA, I do not know what the future holds, but all I know is that I have so much more content in my head and so many more guests out there in the world that I want to talk to. So What's Cooking is going to continue into 2023. We're going to keep this puppy going, and I'm excited to see what the future holds. So as you might know, I majored in data science in college, and I am currently a data quality analyst. So I'm familiar with data. I consider myself to be a numbers person. And when I look back at this year, when I look back at the What's Cooking podcast and the 22 episodes I've uploaded so far, this one will be 23. I'm very glad to see that the platforms that I use to upload my podcasts and distribute them are keeping up with some of the data that we have, some of the metadata that we have alongside my podcasts. I upload my podcast through a website called Anchor, and Anchor distributes these episodes to Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And then you can also listen through a web browser on the Anchor website, I believe. So they give you a good range of options. And then also what I do is I independently, aside from Anchor, take my episodes to YouTube and upload them there. And after 22 weeks of uploading these podcasts and getting listeners to come enjoy the What's Cooking experience, I have a lot of data to share with you guys about my listenership and some of the platforms that you guys listen on, some of the locations that you guys listen at or in. And so I want to give you guys a breakdown of some of the data that Anchor provides me and some of the data that I've kind of thrown together here so we can get a better picture of What's Cooking is all about. So without further ado, let's hop on in here. First data point is just one that I manually counted up. We've had 9 different guests join us for an episode this year. 9 different guests. That's cool, guys. That's awesome. Almost 10. And these are conversations that would not have taken place had I not created this podcast. Some of these people I would not be talking to if this podcast did not exist. It gave us a reason to reconnect. It gave us a reason to look back at some of our favorite memories and catch up with each other and see how we're doing in the current day. So I'm very grateful for this podcast to give me the reason and the ability and kind of an excuse to catch up with friends. So I love that. 9 different guests. We're looking to have plenty more in the future. What's Cooking podcast in the year 2022 had a total of 782 listens across Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and Anchor. And I've had 22 episodes so far, so if you take 782 listens divided by 22 episodes, you get just about 35 listens per episode. We average about 35 listens on one of these episodes. That's really cool, because if you're standing in a room with 35 people looking at you, it might not be the most comfortable situation for everyone, but I'm sitting in my closet right now, and no one is within 20 feet of me, yet there might be 35 people listening to this. And that's crazy to think about how far technology has come and the type of reach and distribution this podcast has. So we appreciate every single one of you guys that tunes in. Now, when it comes to platforms that you guys listen on, I just described to you how Anchor kind of distributes this podcast to Apple Podcasts and Spotify and the Anchor website. And then I also independently upload them to YouTube. So when it comes to these platforms, 1/3 of my listenership, 1/3 of all the listens that I've had on this podcast come from YouTube. And 2/3 of all the listens to this podcast come from those Anchor distributions that go out to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor website. So it sounds like the bigger chunk is going to be Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and 1/3 coming from YouTube. That's still a good enough reason for me to keep uploading these to YouTube, because 33% of you guys listening on YouTube, I'm going to keep it coming for you guys. I know the more diversity I have in my platforms, the more spread out I am, the better chance I'm going to be able to get my message across and capture some listenership. So expect that to continue going forward. When you look at just the Anchor distribution, when you look at underneath the Anchor umbrella of Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Anchor website, we see that Apple Podcasts is going to take 55% of that listenership. Spotify is going to come in second with 33% of the plays. And then the next category is called web browser, which is 10%. I'm assuming that's just anchor.com, or maybe through my link tree that they're accessing these episodes. If I had to guess, it would be anchor.com. I'm not really sure. They don't really give a great description other than web browser there. But what confuses me the most is the last category, which is other, 1%. How are you guys listening if it's not Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor.com, or YouTube? Other? Excuse me? How? I'm very confused. Those are the only places I upload my podcast, so the fact that there's another category on there that says other really baffles me, and I'm not sure how you guys are tuning in if it's not those platforms, but hey, keep it coming, man. I encourage that. If you're able to listen in a different way, then I'm not going to stop you. You go right ahead. I am also proud to present that What's Cookin' is a global podcast. According to Anchor, my episodes have been listened to in the United States, in Norway, and Indonesia, and the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Now, I think I do have an explanation for one of those. I have a good friend from college that is from Indonesia. He was on my intramural basketball team, and I believe that he has returned to Indonesia and listens to the podcast every now and then. So I would assume that that's the case for Indonesia. However, Norway and Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, I do not know anyone that lives there. So if you guys are tuning in from one of those countries and you enjoy the content, then hey, my name's Brandon. Thanks for tuning in. We'll keep it coming for you. Glad to have you. Within the United States, this podcast has been played in 19 different states. And I'm going to list them off here in order of most plays to least plays by those 19 states. From top to bottom, we have Iowa, Minnesota, Illinois, Nebraska, New York, Colorado, Wisconsin, California, Missouri, Michigan, Maine, North Carolina, Indiana, Arizona, Virginia, Washington, Tennessee, Oregon, and Florida. Now, as expected, the vast majority of my listeners come from the state of Iowa. That's where I was born and raised. That's where I met most of my friends. But if you're listening outside the state of Iowa, big shout out to you guys. Taking it across the border, going across to different states, and keeping What's Cookin' in your podcast library. I appreciate that so much. We also have some data that digs in a little bit further, although this is going to be coming from Spotify listeners only. So these next couple ones that I'm mentioning are going to be only based on the listeners who use Spotify to listen to the What's Cookin' podcast. Of these people, 52% of them are male, 48% of them are female. I would have expected a much more heavy lean towards male, but hey, the females are tuning in, and I gotta give it to them. So shout out to all the female listeners, shout out to all the male listeners. Appreciate all you guys. Seems like a even distribution. Maybe that's indicative of my content being suitable for all audiences, huh? How about that? Let's look at the age breakdown. Again, guys, this is coming from Spotify listeners only. The age range that I have the most listenership is going to come from the years of 18 to 22. That's going to make up 30% of my Spotify listeners. Then, in second place, we have a tie between two different age ranges. The 23 to 27 age range is tied with the 45 to 59 age range in making up 26% of my listenership. Next on the list is the age range 28 through 34, which makes up the remaining 17% of my listeners, which gives us an interesting situation that the age range 35 to 44 has a 0% for the listenership. I do not have any Spotify listeners in the age range of 35 to 44. We have a little gap there from the 28 to 34-year-olds between the 45 to 59-year-olds. What I'm guessing is a lot of my friends are in their 20s or late teens or early 30s, and then maybe some of my friends' parents and my parents and my relatives' parents in that 45 to 59 age range, they come in and bring that 26%. So I guess there is a little bit of gap there. I'm going to have to branch out and make some more friends in the 35 to 44 age range. If you're listening to this right now and you're between the ages of 35 to 44, I appreciate you. I want to have you on the podcast. Let's talk. But yeah, I think that's a pretty fair distribution with the exception of that one gap. It's pretty interesting. Keep in mind that is Spotify data only, so not indicative of the entire audience, but nonetheless, it's cool to look at these numbers. I'm a big data guy, so I nerd out on this stuff. And hopefully that gave you guys a picture of the What's Cooking audience and where you guys stack up. Now that we've sliced and diced the data in all sorts of ways, and we've analyzed our audience, let's talk a little bit more about my personal development. Remember, guys, I wanted to become more confident in my speaking abilities. I want to have better conversations with other people, be more engaged as a speaker and as a person in a conversation in any sort of setting. I can definitely say that I'm now a more confident speaker right now than when I started this podcast back in July. I've caught up with some old friends. I've stayed connected with newer friends. I've been able to learn so much about podcast creation and distribution. I was really amazed, especially with the fact that the iPhone can capture such clear audio. You know, a lot of these big podcasts out there are going to have these microphone setups and headphones and plugged in to a bunch of different equipment and stuff. Guys, every single What's Cooking podcast has been recorded with the Voice Memos app on the iPhone. Nothing else. That's how we do it around here. We like to ball on a budget. If you are a hardcore listener, you've heard me talk about balling on a budget before. Why spend more money than necessary when the iPhone does a fantastic job at capturing the audio for this podcast? That's my philosophy, and that's what I've stuck with. I think it gets the job done for what I'm aiming to do. At the end of every episode, I throw in my little What's Cooking in each of those 4 categories that I love. And that's really helped me stay up to date with those 4 categories. I get to talk about current events and give you my opinions on those. And it really forces me to take a side on some of these matters because I sometimes find myself falling into a state of just consuming new information and getting these recent updates and current events and just kind of saying, oh, interesting, and then going back to my regular life. But as a What's Cooking podcast host, bringing you guys these current updates, I've kind of been pushed to pick a side and argue for it, give you my thoughts, give you my opinions, and I think that's really a positive thing for my development, working on picking a side of an argument and stating the facts and reasons why I believe in this one side. So I really enjoy doing that. I think I'm going to continue to try to insert my opinions more, hopefully back them up with some solid evidence, and that'll be my little addition to the end of every episode. What's Cooking in the 4 categories. You guys already know what it's all about. Something that's really cool with this podcast that I didn't realize until recently is that I now have places to refer people for a more detailed explanation on some of my hobbies and some of my stories. For example, a lot of people ask me about Bitcoin, and I try to give the best explanation off the top of my head, but they like to dig deeper and deeper and go beyond what I can recite off of memory. So now I can just say, hey, check out my podcast. I did a whole detailed episode on explaining the ins and outs of Bitcoin. That also applies to Ethereum. I did one about Python and Amazon Web Services, the capabilities you have with those two. So I think that's going to be cool for the future. Maybe it'll save me some hassle going forward. But I think it's also important to be able to give a good, on-the-spot, quick and down-to-the-point explanation. Because if you're truly someone who's interested in these technologies and in these currencies, you should be able to give an elevator pitch, so to speak, on why you believe in it and why it is going to be relevant in the future. And the last thing I want to add before we move on, hopefully these 22 episodes have given you guys some entertainment, some enjoyment, maybe a few laughs here and there. Maybe they made you think. Maybe they helped you learn about something. Maybe they brought you outside of your comfort zone or expanded your knowledge on certain topics. I'm trying to push the boundaries here. I'm trying to bring about new ideas, introduce some opinions, share stories, talk to friends, and really just improve myself in every way possible. So I hope that you guys, the listeners, have gotten some value out of these episodes. Hopefully I can continue to do that in the future. The feedback that you guys give me is always appreciated, always welcome. You can DM me on social media. You can tell me in person or any other way you have of reaching out to me. I'm welcome. My doors are open, so to speak. And I appreciate you guys so much for tuning in. Now that we've done about 20 minutes of recapping the 2022 year for What's Cooking, it's time to get into the main part of the episode for today. This is an idea that my brother proposed when I was home for the holidays. We were sitting around the poker table, playing some cards, having a good time. Somehow my podcast got brought up in the conversation. I asked the fam, do you guys have any ideas for a future podcast episode? What can I talk about? Who should I bring on? That sort of stuff. My brother quickly came up with the idea to rank the months of the year. We did have a lot of disagreements on the rankings of our months, and it made for a good conversation, brought about some new ideas. I had to look at things a different way, but I'm going to share with you guys my rankings from 12 all the way up to 1. What are the best months of the year and why? I think that's going to make for an interesting episode. I'm going to do the best I can to explain each of my decisions for these rankings, why I put them there, why they're not higher, why they're not lower, all that good stuff. There's 12 months to choose from, as we all know. So let's get it started with number 12. Coming in dead last at the 12 spot for months of the year, I have the month February. Now, it's important to mention when I'm ranking these months, I am born and raised in Iowa, and we have some brutal winter weather. So when I say February is dead last, here's going to be my reasoning why. Winter in Iowa really starts getting cold around November, I would say. And then December, you probably have some snow coming in. It's starting to get maybe below 0. But you do have Christmas. You have all this fun holiday stuff going on. January, you have New Year's. You have NFL playoffs going on. It's the start of a new year. Everything's, generally speaking, pretty cool. And then towards the end of January, coming into February, I start to lose my patience with the cold weather and with the snow. This is the month where I reconsider my life choices that led me to live in the state of Iowa. This is the month where I start looking online about vacation destinations to some of the southern states, and I wish that I could relocate myself. Every building you walk into, you're going to be tracking in snow and sleet and slush, and it's really messy, it's really dirty. The days are short, it gets dark early, your options are limited, you can't do a whole lot, and it's really just kind of a a bad mood type of month. So those are the main reasons that February comes in dead last. I will say the one thing it does have going for it is the Super Bowl. You got Super Bowl Sunday in February every year, the most exciting football game of the year by many people's opinions, including myself. Maybe one day the Chargers will be there. Maybe one day I will be at the Super Bowl watching the Chargers. And even though the game is super exciting, it can be a reminder of the incompetence of the franchise I cheer for. So there you have it. That's number 12. It's February. Coming in dead last. Let's move on to the next month in our rankings. Number 11. At the 11 spot, we have the month April. April is a month located in the season of spring, and spring is my least favorite season. So it's natural that April would make it down pretty far, pretty low on this list. And it happens to be number 11. April is in the middle of allergy season. Sometimes my nose will get a little stuffy. But what's even worse than that is that we're coming out of winter and we see that summer is ahead, but we're not quite there yet. And we're not going to be there yet for another month or so. And what this means is that you have snow that's trying to melt. You have things that are trying to heat up, but we're in this in-between stage. Everything's slushy. Everything's kind of wet and damp, and you're not able to really enjoy the nice weather yet, even though it's higher temperatures than it was before. You're just kind of stuck in this in-between phase. You don't have NFL football. College basketball is pretty much ended at this point, although you do have the championship game in April, but then it's done. You really only have NBA to watch at this point. April, one of those in-between months, you can't really decide what it is, and I've decided that it comes in at 11. Let's go look at number 10. Coming in at the number 10 spot is the month of March. You can say a lot of the same things that I just said about the month of April and apply them to the month of March. They're very similar. You're coming out of winter, you're going into spring/summer, but you're not quite there to summer. It's going to be slushy, it's going to be wet, and what puts March ahead of April is the fact that we have March Madness. March Madness, the college basketball tournament that takes the world by storm every March. Filling out a bracket is super cool. Watching all these crazy upsets every year is something I always look forward to. Putting some money down on the line, betting with your friends. I'm really glad that March Madness is such a great and appealing sports event, because otherwise the stretch from February, March, April would be even worse than it already is. So shout out to March for having March Madness. Otherwise, not a whole lot to be excited about in this month. I guess you do have St. Patrick's Day, and you can get a Shamrock Shake, which is one of my favorite treats, one of my favorite drink treat type of deals from McDonald's. Shamrock Shake, one of the best. St. Patrick's Day, solid holiday. March, not a very good month overall. Quickly before I move on, I did forget to mention spring break. We do have to give a special shout out to spring break. That was very fun in my high school and most of my college years. There was the COVID year where they canceled spring break and attached it on to the end of winter break, which really sucked. But overall, spring break is pretty awesome. My senior year of high school spring break, I went to Dallas, Texas, and got to see Dirk Nowitzki and the Mavs lace him up. That was one of my favorite vacations of all time. Good for you, March. You do have March Madness, you do have spring break, but you're still stuck in that strange in-between season, and that's why I'm going to keep you down there at number 10. Next up on the list, we're going to look at number 9, the month of January. January is typically a pretty cool month. You're still in positive spirits coming down from the holidays, that carryover from the December conclusion of the first semester and the happy holiday, Christmas, Hanukkah type of vibes that you got going on in December. Obviously, New Year's carries it on over to January. And so you're still in good spirits. It's a fresh beginning. It's a start of something new. It's a clean slate and happy, positive thoughts as you go into the new year. January is also very good for sports, let me tell you. NFL playoffs are starting up. Wild card round, divisional round. Always some great games of NFL football. Then you got bowl games as well, the New Year's Six type of bowls. College football championship semifinal is going to be, I guess, technically the last day of December, and then you'll have college football championship game in January. So it's the conclusion of college. It's the time where NFL starts heating up. You also have NBA going on. So as far as sports goes, this has got to be one of the best months. The reason I'm keeping it so far down, number 9, January, weather-wise, is going to be one of the coldest months of the year, definitely. There's a very good chance that we spend a good amount of the month in the negative temperatures. So you're not going to be able to spend basically any time outside. You're not going to be able to go enjoy the outdoors very much, unless perhaps you were lucky enough to get a snow day in your young days, and the temperature is somewhere between 0 and 32 degrees with snow on the ground. Then you would go ahead and call up your friends and get a snowball fight going, start building some snowmen, and enjoy the weather out there. But all in all, January, very cold, very dark, very dreary. It's very limited what you're able to do. Yeah, I know I just mentioned all these cool sports and everything going on, but as a participant, as a person who wants to actively do things, you're very limited in January. So that's a big reason why it's so far down on my list. It's not quite as bad as the first 3 I mentioned, but January, not a whole lot you can do outside, not a whole lot you can do in general. It's going to come in at number 9. Number 8. The 8th best month, in my opinion, is going to be May. The month of May. It is not quite as bad as some of these in-between spring months. It's actually what I consider to be the start of summer. The May weather is always getting to that point where, at least in Iowa, you're going to be feeling some upper 60s. You're going to be feeling some 70s. Things start to open up a little more. You can go golfing in May. You can go outside and go for a run, go for a walk in May. So many activities are starting to open up for the summer. A lot of times you'll have school. I know definitely college ends in May. Sometimes your younger age schools will conclude in May, if not in early June. So the ending of one period of life, the beginning of a different period in life. Bye-bye school, hello summer, that type of vibe. School's out. That's always some of the best memories for me. Just that excitement in the air, you know. You can start to tell when things getting warmer and classes start wrapping up. It's just a happy time, you know. You're looking forward to everything you're going to be able to do in the summer. Go outside, spend time with friends, get out of the classroom. Generally a very good month. What brings May down is obviously there's no football. So NFL, you're not going to be able to watch. College football, you're not going to be able to watch. That's tough. But what May does have going for it is NBA playoffs. That's going to start to ramp up in the month of May, getting closer to the NBA finals. You can go outside. You can enjoy life in May. You have May Day, which is an underrated holiday in my opinion. I would always look forward to those baskets on my door and just going around the neighborhood saying what's up to everybody, getting outside, having a good time. May, a solid month all around. We're going to put it at the number 8 spot on our list. Number 7. At 7, we're going to have August. August, all right. This is a change of pace here. This is getting away from the spring, heading deeper into the year. August in Iowa is typically one of the hottest months of the year. This is a month where you're going to be seeing some 90s. You might be even seeing some 100-degree days. August, you got to get ready. You got to get your sunblock ready, your sunglasses and everything. However, this is the end of summer and typically the start of the next school year. So that's a little bit depressing. But you usually start off the school year in good spirits. Syllabus week, is going to be a fun time. You're going to have new friends you're going to meet. You're going to see who's in your classes, what your schedule is, start to figure things out. And I think August is generally good vibes, It's going to be the start of football season coming around soon. Some NFL preseason. You have some college football games starting up. And you still have that summer weather. You can go out and do anything you really need to do or want to do. So August, interesting time in life, interesting time in the year. Super hot. Not exactly my favorite month due to the fact that it's unbearably hot in some points and school starting back up. But August does a good enough job, in my opinion, to make it to number 7 on the list. Let's go ahead and look at number 6. Coming in at number 6 is the month of September. Do you remember? I remember September because September is the month where NFL is officially back. Let's go. You got the pads popping. You got people ready to roll in the NFL. College football is going on. You're in school if you're a student. You still have great weather, though. It's not as hot as August, so things are cooling down slightly. The vibes are awesome. You can do a ton of different stuff in September. And I think September is a great month for many reasons. This is the month as a student where you start to find out what you got yourself into with your class schedule. You start picking up some routines. You start developing some habits. And this is where the first semester kind of comes into place here. You get to see what you're going to be working with, what kind of teachers you have, what kind of classmates you have, and you get to solidify some of the things that you start to get a hint at in August. So it's a formative month, usually has some great weather, a lot of possibilities out there in the outdoor world. Football's starting. You can go check out some favorite college football teams, check out some NFL teams. You got your fantasy football lineup should be ready to go. And this is the point before you lose all hope. This is the point where you still think your team's going to win the Super Bowl, your team's going to the championship, your fantasy team is going to go all the way. And you're too naive at this point to be depressed. And that's why September is a great month. Number 5. The next month, number 5, December. Call me crazy, but I'm putting December at 5. The weather is going to be pretty cold. You might have some snow if you're lucky. There are times when we don't get as much snow as we would like in the Christmas season. I've seen that the past couple of years. However, this year in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, North Liberty, Iowa, the eastern Iowa area, we did have a great snowstorm right before Christmas, and it was excellent. White Christmases are the move. You can't convince me otherwise. But December generally is the conclusion of the first semester of school. You get out of class, you finish up with your finals, you get to clear your head, come home, enjoy some great food, see the family, and have a stress-free break. You're not going to be forced to study and grind all the school work that you're not super thrilled about a lot of times, but you get to clear your head, just come home, have a fresh slate, see the family, celebrate the holidays, and it's really a conclusion to the year that is very welcome, in my opinion. So, December, and hey, listen, NBA, NFL, college football, college basketball, great sports month as well. So, December, all around solid month. It's going to make it to the number 5 spot on my list. Number 4. Number 4 is going to be November. That's right. The month of November at the 4 spot. Very similar to December, although there are a few key differences. You're still in the thick of it. for school. You are prepping for finals, and it's kind of a grind in one sense, but here's what November has going for it. The weather is generally starts out solid. It's going to be sweatshirt weather to start November. You got the hoodie on. It's maybe 50s and 40s going on. That's some of the best weather every year. So you got to love that. Maybe end of November, you start getting into some really cold weather, but beginning of November, you can kind of hold on to that fall weather as we get deeper into it. NFL is really getting into the main part of the season in November. You start to find out what kind of team you have, what kind of league you have. The divisions are starting to shape out. The conferences, the standings are coming out, and you're starting to solidify and kind of see what kind of team you're having this year. So, love that. Also, how could I forget Thanksgiving? You gotta mention Thanksgiving, one of my favorite holidays. You gotta be thankful for everything you have in your life. And I've said it many times in this podcast, I'm thankful for so many things, for everybody that I get to know and talk to, and for all the opportunities that I've had. So a good time to reflect and be with family and have some tremendous food and tremendous quantities of food. Ho, boys. It's one thing to have good food, and it's another thing to have a lot of good food. And Thanksgiving is typically a lot of good food. So you love that. And you're heading into the end of the year, and you're trying to finish strong. So November is an elite month. It makes a spot in the top 4 on my list. Coming in at number 4, gotta love November. Number 3. At the number 3 spot on the top months of the year, I got in the 3rd spot, I got July. That's right, July happens to be my birthday month. So, love that. Always end July with a bang on the 31st, Turning another age older and getting to celebrate with some great people. Always a fun time. But July is what I think of as the middle of summer. This is the peak summer experience. A lot of times in July, you got some hot weather. You got so many opportunities. You can go play any sport outside. You can go do any activity outside. And it is the one month out of all the months that is 100% safe from school. Because sometimes in elementary, middle school, you might leak into June a little bit. And then there are obviously a lot of schools that start in August. So you'll have school every month of the year, sometimes June, sometimes August. July is the one safe haven, 100% safe from any glimpse of school, and we love that. Sorry to all the summer school people out there, but for most of us, July was that month where we could rely on it. We could trust that school would not interfere with a July experience. Obviously, you got 4th of July starting you off in July. Excellent holiday. We got to appreciate the country that we're in, USA, love it or leave it. Some great food, some great fireworks, and a really great way to kick off the month. And then later on in July, you probably got some summer camps going on if you're a little kid. Maybe you got some practices going on if you're an athlete, other good stuff. Unfortunately, there's not going to be football in July. That's the one thing that's really bringing it down. But, and you know what else? You're not going to have much basketball in July either. NBA's already done. So it's really the month where you don't necessarily be a spectator, but you go out and you do those sports yourself. You get to be the player rather than the spectator. So July is a month of action, and I love it. Ends with my birthday on the 31st. And it's all around an excellent month, and it's going to crack the top 3 at the number 3 spot. Number 2. The number 2 spot on the top 10 months is going to be the month of June. That's right. June at the 2 spot. We got so many activities you can do in June, much like July. Great weather. So many possibilities. What I think of June as a kid growing up, I think of this as the peak summer camp month. You had some basketball camps you go into. You had, for me, it was going to be a lot of times when I was younger, Kennedy basketball camp and University of Iowa basketball camp, two of my favorites. You also had some football practices if you were into that, some basketball workouts sometimes in high school. And June really, in my mind, is the month where you're just grinding some workouts. You're grinding some sports. You got lifting one day, you got practice the next day, you got camp the next day, and it's just go, go, go. You're always out there on the court or on the field doing something fun, and it's just constant action, constant sports. You got NBA going on, NBA Finals in June. Love watching that. It's just a great month to be alive, a great month as an athlete to work on your skills, to get better, get in the weight room, get stronger. And self-improvement is huge in June. So for those reasons, I have to give it a really good spot. It's going to make it up to number 2. Now it's time to reveal the number 1 month out of all the months of the year, in my opinion. Number 1, October. Yeah, October. My favorite month. This is the month that is in the smack dab center of fall, which is my favorite season. And October is always just the peak experience because you have weather that's not scorching hot and it's not freezing cold. It's what I call sweatshirt weather, which is the peak experience in Iowa. It's probably going to be low 60s, mid 50s, sometimes dipping into the 40s. You're not going to be sweating. You're not going to be scorching hot. You're not going to be freezing and just dying of cold. It's just a good time. It's a good weather. And let me tell you all the activities you can do. Sometimes in October, it's still nice enough to go golfing in Iowa, so you can get some golf in. You can go out and play any sport, really. Peak football weather. Football, it's cooling off, and it's just football season is in full swing. Used to be the case where you would have Breast Cancer Awareness Month in the NFL, and everybody be rocking the pink accessories. That was always awesome. Basketball is starting up around this time. You got college basketball that's nearly underway. NBA is just starting up. Football is in the perfect swing of things. The weather's excellent. You have plenty of opportunities to go do things outside, and you're in school probably. If you're a student, this is like the center of the first semester. So it's like everything's going on in October. It's the place to be. If you were to choose like the most action-packed time of year, it's probably October. So I love everything that's going on. You have so much options. You have so many different abilities you can do. And as a spectator, it's a peak experience as well. And then to cap it all off, you got Halloween. Whew! The perfect holiday to encapsulate the spooky, scary season. A lot of candy you can be eating, a lot of costumes you can dress up in, and you can go around doing funny stuff and scary stuff, and you have a reason to do it. And that's going to give us the reasons for October being at the number 1 spot, the best month, in my opinion. Do you guys agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Or are you somewhere in the middle? Let me know. Shoot me a DM. What's_cooking on Twitter. What's_cooking on Instagram. I hope you guys enjoyed the content I brought you through today in the main part of the episode. A lot of data about the podcast, our first year in operation. And then we went through and we ranked the months. And I think we have a great list. And I'm willing to battle to the death for my list any day. But now that we've gone through all these shenanigans, it's time to go check out what is cooking
in each of the 4 categories. What's cooking in sports?
First things first, we need to send our thoughts and prayers to Damar Hamlin. Damar Hamlin is a safety for the Buffalo Bills. He was playing in the game against the Bengals on Monday night, made a tackle, looked like a routine tackle, looked like an ordinary play. He was getting up from the ground, and after a second of standing up, he collapsed. People were thinking this might be concussion related. Maybe he got hit in the head. So we saw the medical team come out and assess him. People were just kind of waiting around like we usually do when these type of things happen. Hope for the best. But then it quickly took a turn for the worse. You could see the players' reactions were much more serious than other injuries in the NFL. Turns out the medical team needed to give him CPR. He was in cardiac arrest, and they had to bring his heartbeat back. The medical team was out there for a good 10 to 15 minutes. The players were starting to gather around and kind of form a shield around the situation. You had the ambulance drive out onto the field and drive him off. Ended up going to a nearby hospital. The players were very stunned. They were very shocked. You had guys hugging each other. You had guys crying. And the coaches were struggling to figure out what the best move was at this point in time. You don't really want to continue on like nothing happened because of the gravity of the situation. So after a discussion, they decided to head back to the locker room and wait for a possible update on Hamlin's situation. But we ended up canceling the rest of the game. I guess they called it suspended for the rest of the night. And I think that was the right decision to make. I don't think anyone was in the mood to play football. Anyone was really concerned about football at that point. That was the least of anyone's concerns. At the end of the day, football is just a game. Sometimes a lot of people forget that. We just take it for granted that these players are going to be able to perform every night. And it's a very physical, very violent game. And these injuries take place, and we get so used to that. And it's just kind of get them off the field and continue on so we can keep getting entertained and stuff. And it's really, you need to take a step back when things like this happen and kind of view it from a different perspective. The latest update I heard about Damar Hamlin is that he's in the hospital. They were getting him hooked up with a breathing tube type of setup and hoping that he can resume breathing on his own without the help of other technology and machines, but he is in critical condition, and we are hoping for the best, obviously. We are hoping for a speedy recovery, but it's such a tough situation. And what I'm glad to see is the community support. All the fans in the stadium were very cooperative. They were very silent and respectful. You had people gathering together to say prayers. We had one of Damar Hamlin's fundraisers was found, and the link started going around. People started donating. That thing's up to over $3 million donated now for his fundraiser to help give kids new toys. And I'm really happy to see that people kind of came together in this tough situation. So prayers up absolutely to Damar Hamlin and his family and teammates. And we're all hoping that we hear good news in the near future. And it's important to realize that that is the main focus, and anything football related is just secondary to that. In college football, we did have a good end to the season, a good start to the new year. Iowa Hawkeyes were taking on Kentucky Wildcats in the Music City Bowl. And as Iowa does, we led with the defense, and the offense was good enough to get by. Hawks scored 21 points, and we allowed 0 points. And all of the points we scored somehow came in the second quarter, which is interesting. First quarter, and the entire second half, no one scored any points. In the second quarter, Iowa had a touchdown by Luke Lachey, one of our tight ends, and then we also had 2 pick sixes. One of them coming from Xavier Nwankpa, one of our young and upcoming corners, and then the other one, Cooper DeJean, the stud, the legend. He's been performing so well all year. These 2 guys were able to pick off the Wildcats and take it to the house. The defense outscored the offense. Nothing new there for the Hawkeyes. Joey Labus, let me tell you, he might not have blown anything out of the water. He might not have knocked our socks off, but he took care of business. He had a mediocre, decent type of game, limited the mistakes, and did enough to get by. So we'll take that. Might be the only time we see Labus suit up and play for the Hawks if McNamara is coming to town next year, but you got to like what you saw there. I mean, promising end, promising beginning, however you want to look at it. A new chapter is starting in Hawkeye football, and that's a good way to kick it off. Other NFL games include Chargers versus Rams. Chargers, if they win against the Rams, could lock up the 6th seed. And guess what? We did. We took care of business. The Chargers were firing on all cylinders. We had Herbert throwing some touchdowns. He had 2 passing touchdowns. Austin Eckler, 2 rushing touchdowns, including a 71-yarder. He broke it open and was not going to be caught. Some great blocking by the Chargers on that long run. Keenan Allen came over and got a nice block. A couple offensive linemen had a pull block and some other nice chipping in from the offense to allow Austin Eckler to do what he does. Mike Williams was out there doing his thing. He had an insane one-handed catch on the sideline. My man was twisting and turning and leaning back and grabbing that thing with one hand. It was so cool. Kevin Durant even tweeted about it. So if you're getting that kind of respect, you know you're doing something pretty impressive. Chargers win. We lock up the 6th seed. If we beat the Broncos next week, that means we will be the 5th seed in the AFC. We would probably play the winner of the Jaguars and the Titans for whoever wins that division, AFC South. So that's pretty favorable. I would rather play them compared to the top 3 seeds in the AFC, that's for sure. Hope the Chargers can finish strong against the Broncos, and we'll see where the chips fall. But I like where we're at this point. We have some players coming back from injuries. We're getting a little more healthy. We're starting to catch our groove, and you better look out because the Bolts are heating up. How about some NBA before we move on? Luka Doncic is going on an absolute tear recently. My man is on a historic MVP run. Listen to this. Last 6 games for Luka. It's going to be points, rebounds, assists in that order. Last 6 games, he's had 39, 12, and 8, 51, 6, and 9, 35, 12, and 13, 60, 21, and 10, 32, 9, and 9, 58, and 10. Over the last 6 games, Luka Doncic is averaging roughly 44 points a game, 11 rebounds a game, 10 assists a game. A triple-double with 44 points is his average over the last 6 games. Unbelievable. This dude is from another planet. He is on fire. He is the MVP. The Mavs are on a 7-game win streak, our longest since 2011. You guys know what happened in 2011. Mavs won a title. So I like what things are looking like right now. Christian Wood is starting to chip in more as well. We have finally got him in the starting lineup. And seems like we're rocking and rolling. So look out for the Mavs in the Western Conference. Things are looking up.
What's cooking in finance?
The 2023 financial year is underway. However, we are off to a kind of slow start. Tesla on Tuesday down 12%. 12 more percent after being down a ton the last couple weeks. If you are a big believer in Tesla, you might want to consider getting in at this point because Tesla's been getting beat up recently. It's down in the dumps, and who knows if they're going to turn the ship around or if more pain is ahead, but keep your eye on that stock because it's proven to have substantial growth over the last 5 years or so. Then you have Apple, which was also down about 3.7-ish% on Tuesday. Apple could have a big year in 2023. There are some things lined up that would allow Apple to break out. It's been one of the most reliable stocks in the stock market, and it's at a year. It's like at a year low. I think it's like 52-week low for Apple recently. So once again, guys, you got to be keeping an eye out. If you like these entry points, hey, get your wallet out and put your money where your mouth is. In my opinion, you gotta load up when things are down. It's not always the best decision to buy when there's a peak enthusiasm. Sometimes you gotta be the guy to buy when things are looking scary, and that's when the value arises. So, just a little nugget of information there. Apple market cap goes below $2 trillion for the first time since 2021. Below the 2 trillion mark is still super good by any other company's measurement, but for Apple, that's a little lower than what they're used to. Then you have a famous man by the name Jim Cramer, the host of Mad Money, and a man with a lot of predictions that don't usually go his way. Jim Cramer says he wouldn't touch crypto in 1,000,000 years. Yes, boys, let's go. That is music to my ears. That is the ultimate buy signal. That is a bullish indicator. If Jim Cramer doesn't want to touch crypto in 1,000,000 years, that means we're going to the moon. You better load your bags with some crypto, because anything Jim Cramer says, the opposite comes true. There's an inverse Jim Cramer index I like to talk about that has been performing insanely well. He predicted Coinbase after its IPO to move up to $475. It's come down to double digits. It's come down under $75 if I'm not mistaken. So whatever he touches, man, it goes the opposite direction. So listen up. He wouldn't touch crypto in 1,000,000 years. We love to hear it in the crypto community. Love it. Keep saying that, Jim. Keep saying that. Speaking of crypto, how about the Winklevoss twins? Cameron Winklevoss gives crypto baron Barry Silbert 1 week to come up with $1 billion solution to make his Gemini customers whole. And when they say whole, they just mean return the assets that Gemini customers trusted on the platform. Cameron Winklevoss, the co-founder of digital token exchange Gemini, has issued Barry Silbert a 1-week ultimatum to cough up nearly $1 billion. Winklevoss on Monday accused Silbert of unconscionable behavior by hiding away from his creditors in an ivory tower. In an open letter, the Gemini president said he was acting as a steward for more than 340,000 Gemini Earn users whose over 900 million in crypto has been trapped at DCG's Genesis Global Capital since mid-November. You took this money, the money of the school teachers, to fuel greedy share buybacks, illiquid venture investments, and kamikaze grayscale NAV trades that ballooned the fee-generating assets under management of your trust, wrote Winklevoss in the letter posted to Twitter. All at the expense of creditors and all for your own personal gain. This is another step in the crypto drama that has been unfolding ever since, I would say, late spring, early summer of 2022. Three Arrows Capital collapsed, and the Luna cryptocurrency network collapsed, and that really sent a ripple effect around the crypto community. We had Celsius go down. We had Voyager go down. We had FTX obviously go down. And it's just one thing after the next. And now it seems like Gemini Earn is the next, who knows if it's actually going to go down, but it's the next kind of step in the liquidity crisis that we're having. So Winklevoss wants to get ahead of this. He wants to set a hard deadline. And if Silbert doesn't come up with the money by January 8th, I would assume that Winklevoss is going to take some sort of legal action. And it's going to get messy. It's really a tough look for the crypto community. All these people who are unfaithful, all these people who are not able to return their money that they borrowed. It's really going to expose some practices in the crypto landscape. And I think in the long run, we're going to learn from all this and we're going to become better because of it. But in the short term, it's going to be pain and it's going to be doom and gloom until we find a better system and one that works and one that's more reliable and consistent, because obviously the current situation that we keep having is not going to work going forward. We're getting gashed left and right. It's time for some natural selection, and the strong will survive. So, crypto, sketchy procedures going on, sketchy practices. Keep an eye out for suspicious people. And always remember to keep your crypto stored in cold storage. Keep your private keys offline. Do not let your crypto live online because you are opening a whole can of worms that you cannot close back up.
What's cooking in technology?
ChatGPT debuted in late November, and it has quickly turned into a viral sensation, with people tweeting questions such as, "Are NFTs dead?" And other people making requests like, "Tell a funny joke about the tax risks of international remote work." They include a screenshot of ChatGPT's response, which often, but not always, makes sense. The technology was developed by San Francisco-based OpenAI, a research company led by Sam Altman and backed by Microsoft, and LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, and Khosla Ventures. ChatGPT automatically generates text based on written prompts in a fashion that's much more advanced and creative than the chatbots of Silicon Valley's past. In a year that's turned into a dud for the technology sector, with mass layoffs, wrecked stock prices, and crypto catastrophes dominating the headlines, ChatGPT has served as a reminder that innovation is still happening. Tech executives and venture capitalists have gushed about it on Twitter, some even comparing it to Apple's debut of the iPhone in 2007. 5 days after OpenAI released ChatGPT, Altman said that the chat research tool crossed 1 million users. I don't know if you guys have tried ChatGPT yet. If you've gone onto the website, create an account, and start typing in some questions, it is unbelievably impressive to watch the text get generated, and it's like in paragraph format, in complete sentences, and very coherent and intelligent responses. One of the things I typed in was, write me a 1,000-word essay on LaDainian Tomlinson. And it started off listing LaDainian Tomlinson, his hometown, him going to TCU to play college football, and then how he performed in college. It was chronological leading up to the NFL draft, then talking about early NFL career, his record-setting 2006 season, and then a couple other seasons with the Chargers, moving on to the Jets, how he performed with the Jets, decided to retire, some of the off-the-field work he does in the community and with charity work, and then it kind of recapped it with a concluding paragraph. It was so impressive. You can ask this thing anything, it'll go off, it'll give you a whole explanation. Another thing I asked it to respond on was, will Ethereum market cap ever overtake Bitcoin's market cap? And it told me, well, there's a lot of factors to take in and consider when we're asking this question. And it listed off like 3 different criteria that would need to happen in order for this to take place. What's the outlook for Ethereum going forward? What's the outlook for Bitcoin going forward? Does it consider it to be possible near term, or is it going to be much later down the road? It was so in-depth and so precise. And I feel like this is a revolutionary invention. I'm sure there's going to be more versions coming out. There's going to be more imitations of ChatGPT in the future. People are going to try to imitate it and post their own type of solution to this technology. But from what I've seen with OpenAI and ChatGPT, they are on to something massive here. I believe it's currently free to use, but that might change in the future. They might be putting some sort of subscription plan on this technology. So try to go use it while you can and mess around and see whatever you want to type in, whatever questions you have. It can really like type out a whole essay for you. If I was in high school or college language arts right now, I would consider using this. I would consider maybe not copying it all word for word, but just to get some ideas going. It's so quick and efficient, and you have to respect when a new disruptive technology comes along. You have to respect it, investigate it, and give it its due credit, because my goodness, guys, this is a game changer.
What's cooking in video games?
This isn't exactly from this week. This might have been a couple weeks ago that this happened, but I feel like it's important and I want to kind of go over it. Fortnite, video game maker Epic Games, is going to pay more than $500 million over FTC allegations of privacy violations and unwanted charges. I didn't hear about this until recently, but this was going on in mid-December apparently. The FTC alleged that Epic was aware that many children were playing Fortnite, as shown through the surveys of Fortnite users, the licensing and marketing of Fortnite toys and merchandise, player support, and other company communications, and collected personal data from children without first obtaining parents' verifiable consent. Epic's settings enable live on-by-default text and voice communication for users. The FTC alleges that these default settings, along with Epic's role in matching children and teens with strangers to play Fortnite together, harmed children and teens. Children and teens have been bullied, threatened, harassed, and exposed to dangerous and psychologically traumatizing issues such as suicide while on Fortnite. The FTC alleged that Epic used dark patterns to trick players into making unwanted purchases and let children rack up unauthorized charges without any parental involvement. The company has deployed a variety of dark patterns aimed at getting consumers of all ages to make unintended in-game purchases. Fortnite's counterintuitive, inconsistent, and confusing button configuration led players to incur unwanted charges based on the press of a single button. For example, players could be charged while attempting to wake the game from sleep mode, while the game was in a loading screen, or by pressing an adjacent button while attempting to simply preview an item. These tactics led to hundreds of millions of dollars in unauthorized charges for consumers. Holy smokes. Wow. Fortnite, you are in for a good fine right now, let me tell you. And although this is going to be just a small dent to their financial stockpile, the things that they're being accused of are serious. These default settings that allow text and voice communication without consent, that's dangerous. That's something that you definitely should be asked first. You should have to willingly sort of opt into this. You shouldn't be sent in by default. I feel like that's exposing people to things that they might not want to be exposed to, and apparently the FTC agrees with me. Then you also have this dark practices that trick users into making purchases. Man, they must be hurting for money. They must be pretty greedy in order to trick people and have these counterintuitive, inconsistent, confusing button configurations. It seems like a big scheme in order to get money by any means necessary. Not a very big integrity move here. This is kind of a low blow, taking advantage of people. And those are not the business practices that would help you make a reputable name for yourself. And it's good that people are starting to step up and acknowledge this and take action, because the last thing we want is children being taken advantage of. And it seems like that's been the case. So Epic Games, you got to figure it out, man. You got some big changes you need to make. I have not been a Fortnite player. I did not get into the whole craze when it started in 2017 or around that point. I actually did play one Fortnite game in my entire life, and that was at a friend's house. I got one kill, and then I died, and I never played it again. I think it's a little cringy. I think it's something that I never really found myself interested in. There's these times when there's games and trends that sweep the nation, and you have to make a defining decision early on. Are you going to get into it and enjoy it and invest a lot into it, or are you going to just sit this one out? And Fortnite is one of those trends that I just decided to sit on the sideline, and I feel like I might have made the right decision there. Who knows? It's hard to tell, but that's just my perspective on these issues. I don't know what you guys think of all this. Hopefully you are enlightened with some new information. I think ChatGPT is a big game changer. I think Luka Doncic is MVP. And I think that we need to say another prayer for DeMar Hamlin. Thank you guys for listening this week. Episode 23 in the books. We talked about some year-end data for 2022 of the What's Cooking podcast. Then we went on and ranked the months from worst to best. If you guys disagree with my rankings, let me know what you really think. Hit me up. What's_cooking on Twitter. What's_cooking on Instagram. Got a Facebook page, got a YouTube channel. You already know. Keep listening for next Wednesday. We're going to have more content. We're going to have more podcasts coming out. I've been on a dry spell of having guests on. And unfortunately, guys, we did have a guest lined up and I got sick. Darn it. Frustrating, but not much you can do. We will have more content coming at you later on. But for now, take it easy. I will see you next Wednesday. Peace.